Thank you for tuning into this Valentine's Day full moon yin class. And the focus is going to be around lighting our fire. Full moon is a great full energy time to really kind of feel our own power. And I think sometimes, we're always doing this and that and doing this for somebody else, doing this for this reason that we kind of forget about what we need and we let our own internal fire go out a little bit. So we'll be cultivating that fire, right? So that should feel good. Some poses that are really deep opening into the hips, some deep poses for the spine, and we'll work a little bit of twisting too, and that will get into the shoulders. And we'll start in Sphinx on our abdomen. So this is a back bend pose, right? So I'm going to keep some poses as I come to my belly towards the front of the mat so that I can reach them. And then you prop yourself up on your forearms and you can modulate walking your hands a little bit forward if you need less intensity, or closer to if you need more, and then play with the spacing between the legs. And for tonight, let's go ahead and tuck the toes under if that feels okay. You could always put a little rolled up blanket in that space between the ground and the front of your ankle. If this becomes too intense though, just do tops of toes facing down. And then for this opening kind of grounding breath work, let's try the 4-block breath where we inhale to the count of 4. We hold at the top of the inhale for that same count. We exhale for the 4. And then we hold the exhale at the bottom for 4 counts as well, and then starting again. And if you try the number 4 and that doesn't work, you can use 5, you can use 2, whatever feels good. And really tune in to how things are feeling physically at that bottom of the exhale, as well as we're holding the breath. See if you can really let go of any tension in that spot before you breathe in again. So this breath and that breath style can all be beneficial, but if we're doing the breath and it's causing any anxiety or worry or feeling like we're not breathing as right or as well as we should, then it's not kind of good for our body. So feel free to abandon it or change it if it's not working. Check in with the level of intensity that you're feeling in your spine. If sensation has subsided and you feel like it's a bit too restorative of a pose, you can come up a little bit higher, bringing either your bolster or blocks underneath your forearm. We're using some intensity of the pose to cultivate that fire, but it's got to be that perfect level where we're not stressing the body out too much, but feeling something. And around these intense poses, the body wants to tense up. So see if you can stick to that 4-block breath, or any style of breath where you really just focus on the exhale and that release at the bottom. And we'll see if we can keep the nervous system at a good level, breathing through it. Okay, we'll start to come down and do so slowly as you're removing your props. If you've had them, you want to not twist the spine too much. And you can come into some resting form. I like this baby crocodile where I take my elbows wide, rest my head to my hands, and if the toes are still tucked, you can untuck them. If you want to counter, a little bit of movement would feel good for you. You can bend your knees so that the feet lift and let them sway gently side to side. You can also just stay still and send some nice breath into your lower spine. And then when you're ready, you can come up on your forearms again and go ahead and find your yoga strap. You don't need to have a loop for today. You can just have a good length of strap. And then what you'll do is you'll hold the strap in your right hand where you've got this little loop where you could fit your foot through, right? Big enough for that. So creeping lizard, my left hand is going to go across my body and it's going to hold me up into some variation of Sphinx. My left leg will bend and the foot comes up. My right hand's going to reach back and I'm going to strap my foot. And depending on how your strap is, you might have to even it out so there's equal lengths on both sides. You could bring your right arm back into Sphinx if you wanted to, or you could reach back with your hand and hold more towards your foot, or if your foot is accessible, you could hold your foot this way. And if this twisting while you're lifted in Sphinx is too much, just let the chest come down and you can rest the forehead to the forearm. With each pose, tune back into that 4-block count. It will kind of disrupt whatever thinking we have about the pose or how well our entry to the pose went. And just start collecting data, right? Listening to your body, what it might need to do. Is it a good sensation or is it too stressful? Is it too relaxing? Do you need to build your heat, build the intensity up? Okay, we're gonna hold our head in our left hand. So your left elbow is down, your left upper arm is down, and we're gonna take this into a little bit of a twist. I'm gonna keep my foot strapped as I roll a little bit more to my left. And as I do so, I'm gonna be able to bend my right knee a little bit, and that will act as a balance. And here we are, this twisting cattail variation. Again, you can always lengthen your strap or shorten your strap or hold your foot to accommodate this little bit of a variation on the pose and the adjustment you might need. And if you want to go deeper, you might roll a little bit back further into your twist. This also could be a nice spot for your bolster or a pillow or a blanket if you wanted to lean into the prop to support you some. Most of these poses are working the hips as well as the arm line and the spine. So that hips and twisting is working our inner fire. working into the arms and chest and shoulder, right? That's our blood pumping, our heart meridian. And make sure we meet that with a nice, strong focus on the breath. It's too hard to maintain that 4-block breath in the pose. That's your litmus test that tells you it's a little bit too far back off slightly. Right? Or maybe if you were thinking about your grocery list, go a little deeper. Two more rounds of that 4-block breath. And then we'll slowly start to roll onto our abdomen. And we'll take that creeping lizard pose, one we did before the twist. On the second side, my left hand will hold the strap and I'll make that loop big enough for my foot. My right hand's going across my body to support as my right leg lifts. And then my left hand reaches back and I strap the foot. Decide if you'll let some slack into the line so that you can have more of a sphinx stance or have both elbows down. Or if that left hand will reach back and hold the strap or the foot. And then if you'll stay up or you'll come down. And we'll start to make our way into the twist. So catch your head in your right hand and let your right elbow and right upper arm be down. And keeping with that strap, I'll roll more to my right. At some point, bending my left knee up somewhat just to support for balance. And decide how much you might lean back into the pose over the next couple minutes. Where in the body can you soften? Where is the muscular tension hiding in this pose? And then slowly release, making our way back onto our abdomen. The strap can go aside, and you'll press your palms down alongside you as you come to hands and knees. We'll come into a child's pose. We'll take the stance nice and wide, and we'll do a twisting variation. It can be nice to have a thinly folded blanket to bring your shoulder and your head down on, just in case there's any distance between your limbs and the ground. So as I extend my arms out, my right arm will thread under, and my right shoulder and my right temple will come down. I like to use my forearm sometimes as a block, but for today's class, I'm going to offer this bind with the left arm. So after you bring the right temple and the right arm down, you can bring the left hand behind your back of palm to lower back. And you could hold on to one of your garments or tuck your hand in to keep it back there. And we'll switch sides. The left hand will fall to the mat. You'll unthread the right arm. And the left arm will thread under. And you can bring your left temple down. The back of the right hand will come to the lower back. And you could hold on or tuck in. Pulling air into the pose by means of breath is like pulling a little air into that stifled fire. Keeps everything moving, expanding, contracting, oxygenating our cells. Let the right arm come down, unthread the left, and we'll upright ourselves and set up for our next pose, which will be fish. You'll want to use a block, and a block is going to go the long way between your shoulder blades, right? And this will allow our chest to kind of fall open and our arms to drop alongside us. closer to our body. And then we'll do fish first, and then we'll have the option of coming into butterfly. So if you want to have 2 blocks or 2 props, it could be a pillow and a blanket outside your hip area. They'll be handy for that next variation. So we start sitting, and that block will come behind my shoulder blades. I usually have to adjust it when I get down there. And I don't have a block for my head, so my head will just fall back to the ground. I could use that blanket as a pillow if I needed to. Certainly put something underneath if it doesn't feel good. And then the arms will come alongside you with the thumbs closest to your hips, so palm face down. And we'll walk the thumbs underneath the seat. And if at any point that becomes too much sensation, you can just let your hands come alongside you, untucking them. Fish pose is a nice pose to stimulate the upper part of our heart meridian, which runs into our throat. And that's all about expression, right? That is the verbal release valve for all this energy. And when we stimulate this area of our body, it helps us to find that right balance between speak and listen, between expression and expression and saying too much sometimes, right? The right amount of words, the right words. Take a few more nice big breaths into your chest and fill up your rib basket on your inhale, soften on your exhale. And then we'll let the arms flop out nice and wide with the palms facing up. And we'll take the lower body into into butterfly, sorry, we're in fish. The bottoms of the feet come to the mat. And then as the knees fall open, the bottoms of the feet come together. And this is where you could grab your props. Oh, it's way over here. Way over here. And place them in between your outer knee and the ground for a little support if the knees dropping open is too much intensity. Let your arms be heavy to the floor. Let your shoulders completely release tension, just flopping onto your block and melting over the sides. And we can breathe into that heart meridian by focusing on the line that runs from finger up the arm, across the chest, and down the opposite side. Slowly the knees will come back together and you can roll to your side so that you can move the prop from behind you. Go ahead and find your strap. And we're going to either make a loop or tie the strap around our legs. And it could be, let's say we'll go with the lower thigh just above the knee so that we can hold a stance of about hip width distance. So just for a refresher on the strap, if you have the buckle, it can be kind of confusing. You can see the two metal pieces. It goes under both and then back up and over the first one and under the second one. And then you should be able to tighten your strap. You can always just tie a knot or tie like you're tying your shoelaces to get it to stay. And this will be so when we come into our supported bridge pose, our knees don't fall out. So we'll have a support holding them in without having to use our leg line muscles to do that. Now, as you come to lay down onto your back, make sure you have your bolster within reach, and the bolster is going to go underneath us. You could also use a block with a blanket. So as I come to lay down, I'll step into my feet, my hips lift, and that the bolster comes right underneath my seat. So this is supported bridge, and you can keep your knees bent and with the feet to the ground as they are now, or you could see how it feels to extend the legs out straight to some degree. They don't have to be completely straight. And this strap is kind of a new variation in this supported drawbridge pose that we've done before. So if it's not working for you, you can always stitch the strap too. Now we can further open the front of the hips by where we place our arms, because the whole muscle and connective tissue system is like a train through the body. So if I keep my arms in goalpost shape on the ground, that's more of an extension of the front body than if my hands were down by my side. And then you can go further with that, maybe the arms reaching back to the wall or furniture behind you. This pose should feel like a nice opening for the front body. It shouldn't be working the shoulders at all. So if your focus is going to your shoulders because you're having some intensity, bring your arms down a little bit. And if you're feeling too much in your lower back, maybe whatever's underneath you is too high and you could lower it. And then the opposite is true too. You could, if you're not feeling anything in your spine or the front of your hips, you could put something underneath your hips to make your bolster a little higher. This could be a nice pose to tune back into that 4-block breath. And that deep letting go on the exhale. And if your legs are extended, you can start to rebend. And our next pose is Waterfall Pose. So if you're happy with what's underneath your hips, you could let your knees just dangle up towards the sky. I'm going to switch my orientation just because that's going to make sense for the next couple poses. If you have a wall, you could also use that, and I can demo the waterfall pose there as well. You side saddle the wall so that one of your hips is touching. You're so close. And that way, when you sit back, your seat is close to the wall, which positions your feet right over your hips, which is less stressful for the spine than if my seat was further away and my legs were further away from me. And when you have the wall, you don't necessarily need the block. And that can be really helpful for folks that maybe think they've done enough back bending. They don't want to do any more back bending today. And it can feel really nice to have the sacrum grounded, but you could do both. You could press into the wall, lift your hips, and slide a prop underneath so you get that little back bend as well as the support from the wall. We're about to come into a series of variations of waterfall pose and snail pose to open up the spine a little bit. We create some rounding within the body to create space within the vertebrae, and it opens up the back of the legs too. And the full snail can be kind of tricky on your head and your neck. So if things are feeling sensitive, this waterfall pose is a great one. Or my favorite, the modified snail, where we just bend our knees and waterfall towards our chest. This creates a little bit of rounding and space for the lower back. And you don't have to if you have the block underneath you likely to hold your legs at all, but you could if the added pressure feels nice for your abdomen and your spine. And I'm not really pulling, it's more so my hands are just hanging onto my shins. And the extra weight is giving a little bit of a depth to the pose. Also, we think about the release, this full moon release. We're giving a little detox to our organs when we provide some front body compression. If you'd like, you can hold behind your legs, behind your knees, behind your thighs. And this is a little bit deeper of a snail pose variation where I have the legs straighter, and the feet are kind of already proceeding up and overhead. You could also use your strap in any way here too, and that could be fun to try out. How does it feel if I strap my legs, my feet, my calves, my thighs? And you'll notice the closer you get to the feet, the more intensity that can bring. So work into it slowly. And then let's have a little honest check-in with the body, coming to that 4-block breath, see how things are going. And the breath might not seem as full because you're being stifled just by the compression. So some of that should be expected. Now, if you want to come into the full variation or a deeper variation of snail, the hips lift off the ground, and sometimes the hands like to hold the hips for support, and sometimes the hands stay to the ground in some spot. There are variations where you might continue to hold your strap or your feet as long as it feels good on your spine. And speaking of, remember to keep the neck neutral. Try to avoid looking side to side. And over the next 30 seconds or so, slowly start coming out of the pose, remembering that your block or prop might be there for your hips to fall back into if they were lifted. Easily making your way back to your waterfall pose. If you have a prop underneath your seat, you can set that aside. And then we're going to come to hands and knees. If you're at the wall, you can roll to one side. And if you're not at the wall, maybe some rocking and rolling would feel nice. And from hands and knees, we'll prepare for dragon, which is a low lunging forward pose. And I like to have blocks underneath my hand. It can be nice to have a bolster or a blanket handy. And we'll offer a little reach back twist. If you want to try that, you could have your strap handy. If you needed your strap before, you probably will need it now. And then I'll kneel on something a little bit sturdy here just to get some cushion. And from tabletop, I'm going to go ahead and step my right foot forward wide and bring both hands inside my right foot. And then you can play with the right foot's angle or how far the right foot comes to the center or goes out to the side. And I've used these blocks to extend my arm, but you could have your hands to the mat if that feels too much. You can also create a little situation where you're coming down onto your forearms onto blocks or to the bolster. Deep hip opener, deep release, strong fuel for that inner fire. Keep stoking it with your breath. The position of the torso, whether your hands are down or your forearms are down, will impact the opening, the depth. So you can, if you need to have a little bit of a release, you might let your chin tuck, almost like you would be gazing back towards your navel. And that will give a little rounding in the spine and a shortening of the front body tissue, which will lessen the intensity. And the opposite is true. And if you want to slightly deepen the pose, you can have the gaze lifted more towards the front of your mat. All right, we'll twist. So the left hand or the left forearm can stay to the prop as the right hand comes to the right leg, and we twist in that direction. Works both if the left palm and the left forearm is down, but one might feel better or worse. If you want to go deeper, if that would feel like blossoming, not stifling, the left foot might lift off the ground and the right hand can reach back for it. You can see I've got my back foot there. And this is where you could also use the strap. Easy with the twisting and your cowboy and cowgirl moves if you are using your strap. And then just as before, you can choose to have a long arm where you're choking up on the strap and you're reaching back. That is a definite opener for that heartline meridian. Or if you're holding your foot, that is some extra resistance. And if that feels like too much, you could lengthen up on the strap, come out of the twist slightly so that right hand could return to the right leg, or maybe the right elbow returns to the right leg. If you have your foot, you can slowly let it go, slowly untwist. And then we walk out of the pose by sending the hips back, more aligned over the left knee. And then the right foot steps back. And then we're back into that table shape. If your foot is still strapped like mine, you can set your props on the other side. For my tabletop, my left foot will come forward and both my hands will come inside my left leg. There's absolutely no benefit to doing the exact same pose you did on the other side on this side. Right, what's better for this side of the body is to tune in and notice how things feel. Is this tighter? Does it feel more open? Does it feel better in my hands? It's feeling a little bit better in my hands than on the other side personally, or am I going to come down to forearms? Right, the brain likes to do that autopilot thing. Oh, this is what I did, so this is what I'll do. Remember about the spine and the direction of the gaze and how that can help you. And the left hand will come to the left thigh. Adjust the right arm to the forearm or to the palm accordingly as you start to move gradually into the twist. And for about a minute and a half, we'll stay in this variation with our tail, our back leg to the ground. Notice how some belly breath can also help to intensify if you're looking for depth. It also can shake off a little energetic tension that one might be holding if the pose is feeling intense. Right? Room to breathe. And if you'd like to reach back, the right foot could lift and you could lasso or reach back with your left hand. What can you soften? Sometimes our tension, our emotional tension around the pose is causing more sensation. We can soften at times with the breath, and it might feel more easeful. Or if you soften and you notice that it's growing in intensity, our body was probably protecting us because we're going too deep. And release the foot, release the twist, and release the lunge. Okay, so we're gonna have frog pose be the finale here. So if you have a couple blocks or a bolster, go at blankets, put them towards the left side of your mat. Our knees are going to be really wide. So if you have a knee pad, like this knee pad probably won't work for me because my knees will be greater than mat width distance once I turn sideways here. So I'm going to open up a blanket really wide and long so that my knees can have something soft to go into. And then I turn sideways, right sideways on my mat, and I'm looking towards that left side where I've set my props. And then I can bring my hands to my bolster or my blocks, and then I'll take myself into a really wide tabletop. Right? And not only are my knees going to come really wide, but my feet are going to come really wide too. So that's kind of what makes it different from child's pose. With that said, if you need to lighten up on the pose, if frog is too much, bringing your toes closer together is a way to lessen the intensity. So now we have our knees wide, we have our shins wide, our feet wide. The next step for depth is to flex the feet so that the feet are pointing out. And that's not possible for all folks, for all bodies. So listen to the knees. If they don't like it, don't do it, right? Modify. I can deepen the pose by sending my hips back some. I can lessen the intensity by letting my hips come forward. So that's another level you can press. And then you come down to whatever depth feels good. And you can build up the props underneath you to support. It might be that your chest comes down to the ground. Mine will not, maybe yours will. And then, wherever you are, make it comfortable. Use whatever remaining props you have around to create some space so that you can nicely rest the head and the arms. Breathe into that abdomen. Practice the 4-block breath if you can. Okay. The best way to come out of frog pose I've found is to let yourself slide forward so your legs straight. I might go off camera to do so. Okay? Once my legs are long enough that I can walk them towards each other, then I can set my hips up and back for a nice closed knee child's pose as a counter. So we'll just hold this for a few breaths. And go ahead and press yourself up to hero's pose. You can put a block in between your feet and sit on that if you're having trouble sitting right back, or maybe 2 blocks, or even your bolster. And then we'll flip the palms open to receive. The eyes can be closed, but gazing as if the head was lifted to look out to the horizon. And we'll do that 4-block centering breath one more time. As you focus here on your breath, right, know that this is it. Creating the presence, taking the focus from the mind into the body and just listening and hearing what it needs. Giving it a little oxygen, a little fuel, a little rest, whatever it is. And if you have your eyes closed, you can open them and we'll transition into our final rest Shavasana for Starfish. Let's go ahead and put a block behind each leg, or you can use your bolster if you have that. Lay down on something soft, maybe something behind your head. And take your arms out nice and wide for this variation of Shavasana called Starfish Pose. Feel the back of your head heavy. Feel your right arm heavy. Your right leg weighted down. Your left leg. Your left arm. Gravity is holding you to the earth. As we have this deep rest for our body, let's continue to anchor the mind in that present moment as well. Start to bring a little bit of movement to your ankles and your wrists, making circles. You can move your props out from underneath your legs and maybe roll to one side. Fetal shape is a great reminder that each day we can begin again. And when you're ready, you can come up and find a comfortable seat. Hero's pose, cross-legged in a chair, whatever feels nice. But notice your sitting bones rooting down and your whole spine just lengthening up, the back body, crown of head like a magnet reaching to the sky. Take a few breaths. Notice that space. And let's come to heart center onto the mudra with gratitude for all that we have. Together we breathe in and exhale out. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class. Ask questions if you have them, and take care.